Son of a bee. Ah!
Oh no!
We're live and my headphones aren't on. Happy Thursday! Episode 32, Go FUD Yourself. I'm JD Daniel. This is my good friend Kara. What is up?
It's Thursday, it's spring, it's a time of change. Everyone's taking small steps forward in their new growth.
Oh.
Including every country in the freaking crypto arms race. There's so many tiny little articles today. Again, I don't know if that is actually news or if people are just back reporting, so we'll talk about that. And we're going to talk about Gensler. That's going to take the whole time. You're going to be mad about it.
Yeah, it's good. Hey, and I heard we're going to crown the king of FUD today.
Yeah, we are.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, we are. Okay, let's go.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Okay. Lots of crap going on.
Let's out crypto arms race because I can't help myself because I am obsessed because I need you all to know about every baby step in the crypto arms race. First one is Thailand. I don't know if this one should even be news because it's literally Thailand considers doing something. I don't know.
These are interesting because this actually made it across quite a few news wires. I think it's definitely, a step in the right direction if in fact it is going to come to fruition.
So just for, what that fruition is that they will lift the very low retail limit.
Yeah, 300,000 baht is like, I don't even know. I think it's like $30 or something, or like $300. It's a very, very low amount, which when taken in context, I mean, for many people in Thailand, that's a lot of money. So it's like these rules, and we'll talk about this.
$8,785 today.
Wow, my math is way off. So that's a lot of money to most Thai people. Obviously, to most people, like $8,000 to $10,000 exposed to any ICO is kind of crazy for most people. And so I understand why these rules are put in place. Obviously, the goal of most jurisdictions, at least the initial goal, is to just protect consumers, to find ways to protect consumers from themselves and from malicious actors. Thailand, how many ICOs happen in Thailand where they're heavily regulated? Like none, not very many. So this isn't like world-changing,
Tell me what this actually
space-shaping.
means.
I think this just
what would this
is enough. So this would just allow Thai people to invest more into ICOs, obviously, which I don't think they're coming anywhere close to the theoretical cap for individuals. Generally speaking, there's probably a few that are annoyed by this rule, but there's also ways around it, of course. So I think this is just another one of those like slow news days, possibly. Everybody picked up this story. It is obviously a good sign. I think anytime that we hear another global jurisdiction trying to move things forward, trying to understand and find ways to engage blockchain and crypto, I think it's a good thing. That's it. But we don't need to spend a whole hell of a lot more time on that one.
The next one is Japan. What's interesting about this is it didn't actually come up on any of my news feeds. I found this when I was trying to find more information about stable coins outweighing Bitcoin in Japan, which did come up on my news feeds. But Japan's finance ministry has actually pretty secure plans to explore a digital yen. So not to launch one. They've explicitly said they have no plans to launch one specifically, but they put together a committee. And so they're basically putting together a feasibility study. And they have a pilot program starting in April to test a digital yen, but not a blockchain digital yen. So they're trying a couple of different things. I think it's just worth keeping on your radar.
Yeah. So effectively, a digital currency that isn't blockchain enabled is essentially fiat. Like most fiat is digitized in many ways. Like it lives on computer screens. Fractional reserve banking obviously made that a reality. It's not a dollar for dollar. They can lend out more than they have on deposits, obviously. Hence the banking challenge at the moment. When people want their deposits back, but they can't call all the loans, obviously. So anyways, this is an interesting one. Japan, I mean, at one time, and still in some ways, it was a really tech-forward economy. And there was a lot of amazing tech that came out, especially pre-internet, out of Japan, like TVs and vehicles. And there's a tech boom there. But again, due to some fairly sizable global macro challenges with credit default swaps and the way long-term capital management happened, and some of these major global jurisdictions had significant problems with sovereign debt and all these other things, Japan was not excluded from that list. So Japan's had crazy inflation, they had stagflation, they had deflation, like their currency's kind of been a ping pong ball. I haven't followed it recently, to be honest. So I'm not 100% certain what specifically their currency is doing now. But I mean, again, anytime that we can get away from, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, right? Monetary policy, we talked about this yesterday. M1 and M2 monetary policy is one of the major reasons for explosive economic growth in the last number of decades. If digital currencies are done for the reasons that we all think they're going to be done, should be done, then in fact, they will be immune to manipulation management by, central banks and the Federal Reserve in the US. I don't think that's what any of these jurisdictions' actual intentions are. Like they don't want to give up that power, because that's effectively the greatest source of power for many of these jurisdictions is their ability to control the economy, or at least perception that they can control the economy. And oftentimes it does well. So anyways.
I don't want to downplay Japan exploring a CBDC. However, it is exactly the same plan that everyone else who's exploring a CBDC has. They are testing some feasibility, and they're testing if they can do it technically, and they're testing if people are interested. They're exploring it. It's good to keep on your radar, but is it particularly over the top newsworthy? No, it's something that we're seeing coming out of a lot of other jurisdictions in Australia.
Hey, before we move on, we had a question yesterday from oh, is it on there?
No, but we're going to talk about it. I have it written down.
Okay. I want to make sure we answer the question, and I think our friend is watching again on Twitch. So let's make sure we answer that today. Anyways, okay, go ahead. What's next?
JP Morgan launches blockchain-based dollar accounts for banks in India. Cool.
Yeah. I'm not really sure what to think of this one. JP Morgan, as we've talked about, I think previously, has a fairly sizable division exploring and building things related to blockchain. Quite sizable, actually, like well over 100 employees, as far as I know, working on that. So this doesn't really surprise me. I'm not entirely sure what the angle is, like why blockchain-based dollars in India. It seems a little strange to me. Maybe there's some relationship with the Indian government or something that's driving this. Anyways, it's restricted to the gift city. I think that's what it's called, gift city. Yep. It's restricted to that, and for certain functions, I really don't understand. Again, probably don't need to understand the tiny nuances about this. That again, they're looking to try to bring in quick and sustainable capital into these environments. SWIFT is a nightmare, especially in and out of India, and the other ways of international money transfers. So I think this is a bit of a pilot for JP Morgan. And so again, the nuances of this particular engagement, maybe not that important, but I think in general, in the larger scheme, what this says to me is, hey, the largest institutions in the world, as well as many governments, are open to exploring this stuff, and we're starting to see that. And so that to me is quite positive. Will this change crypto forever? Probably not. But I think it's definitely an amazing step in the right direction. Yeah. What else? You got really quiet all of a sudden.
It's because I froze. I froze so hard.
Oh man, I thought you were just like.
I'm having a bad time with my computer today. I need some magic fingers or something.
Some keyboard juju.
The next one is EU lawmakers vote to impose a 1,000 euro limit on unidentified crypto transactions. This one's interesting because we're seeing a lot of places lift restrictions and the EU is putting in an extra restriction. But the concept here is that it's supposed to be unidentified crypto transactions. And I wasn't actually able to figure out what unidentified meant, because if you think about it from a blockchain perspective, they're all identified, right? They're all on chain, they're all transacted, we can see them all. So I don't know if they're looking like if they're unidentified, how are they even going to enforce that? I haven't figured it out.
Yeah, effectively what this is suggesting is that, so if you read down in the article on this one, in the articles, again, this was syndicated pretty much everywhere, but if you read down in the articles, it's not any transaction that people are doing in their personal wallets. It's when interacting with specific businesses, brokers, banks, et cetera, et cetera. And what they're suggesting is that KYC is going to be required. I mean, again, we're really going to have to think as a space, how can we implement some version of KYC, some version of identity management that still allows the user to have data sovereignty, or at least as much data sovereignty as is feasibly possible, while at the same time supporting, the regulatory expectations of Western jurisdictions. So this is an interesting one. More or less, it says without KYC, you can't transact over a certain amount with certain companies and professionals and so on. That's pretty standard, I think. I think it's kind of to be expected, in my opinion. That's how the banking system currently works for money laundering reasons and consumer protection. So it is what it is. It's just that the title is a little fuddy, I think. It causes people to jump to conclusions that maybe aren't accurate. So yeah, is this amazing? Probably not. For many people, there's going to take some adjustment for a lot of platforms, for a lot of institutions, for a lot of projects, for a lot of users. It's going to take some adjustment, but I don't see a world where, honestly, I don't see a world where, if you're in the EU or if you're in, Western Europe, UK, if you're in America, Canada, Australia, many of these Western jurisdictions, I just don't see a way that this won't be the status quo very soon. So let's embrace it.
Yep. The next one is my favorite of the pack because it's royal hype. I love all royal hype because it's such bullshit.
This gets me too.
I don't know why. I think it's so funny.
we have a lot of friends in the UK, partners on many things, but also friends. And this is like such an enigma to me, like the royal family. And so I'm generally not someone that's like ever starstruck or like, everybody says like, don't meet your heroes. I've like met a couple people that I thought were like pretty exciting human beings in life, and then realized that they're just humans like the rest of us.
Humans, yeah.
We're all fallible. We all have idiosyncrasies, whatever. So even like celebrities and stuff, I'm like totally not like at all motivated by that, by celebrity status or any of this stuff. So to me, the royal family, they're just human beings that are in some weird position of affluence in my mind. And they're not special anymore. They're not actually the ruling class anymore. They're not an autocracy anymore. But in the UK, it's such like a visceral sense of pride. And history, the historical significance of the English Empire, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a very interesting one. But
I also
anyways,
know lots of anti-monarchists, right? Especially in Canada, there are lots of anti-monarchists. But
yeah, I don't know how this even came out. That
it's just so great. So big, like it doesn't even have to do with the royal family, really. It's just
the royal mint, really, which is
it's the royal mint. But I don't know, anything with royal in the title just sends people a flutter. But basically, the chancellor over a year ago now requested that they make a royal mint NFT, so a specific to Britain NFT, which sounds great, except who cares? And of course, all the criticism now is, can we deal with the cost of living crisis instead of crypto gimmicks, please? And it's come down to they are finally dropping the plan to launch the NFT. Maybe. Again,
Maybe.
not quite a news source. Actually, it's just a maybe.
Well, the thing about this, I mean, this came from Bitcoin.com. That's the article that we're using, and they're pretty good for sourcing relatively accurate information. But again, this one seems a little bit like, okay, who cares? But I mean, normally I would shit on this concept. Like all of these big brands trying to do NFTs for no reason. Brands, countries, people, personalities, with no meaningful use case. The days of like, ooh, I got a UK PFP, are, in my opinion, are kind of done. Like now where people are actually saying, okay, so what's the actual use of this? Like, is there something we're going to be able to do? Again, I said that normally I would shit on this stuff, but I shit on the Trump NFTs, which went bananas. They're so ridiculous, like they're obnoxious, but the timing is key. Right now, NFTs are very out of vogue in many ways because a lot of retail lost a lot of money based on influencer shilling and market conditions and just really asymmetrical understanding of how the markets work. And so NFTs aren't super prominent right now. So I think they're just probably looking at it like, hey, this is like kind of the worst time to launch a project like this. At least
doesn't have any value or utility. Like at least with the
Exactly.
Trump NFTs, it was a great way to like pilfer money around because it was under the $10,000 mark, right? Whereas with this one, they're just like, it was going to be the queen, but she passed, so we can't really do that.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what their intention was. Where were they going for?
Again, when the NFT and culture and art market is frothy, then of course you can pull stuff off like this. Like people just jump in because they're like, oh, this could be cool in a few years. But in times like now, people are a lot more discerning where they're going to spend their money and how they're going to invest in things. And I think a zero utility NFT, or at least that's our perception, is that it would have near zero utility, is kind of an act in futility. So I'm not surprised by this. I'm not sure how this is really like big news. They decided not to do something that they had never even like committed to doing. If this was news all the time, like I couldn't even imagine what our news.
Well, it is news all the time. That's why we're here. It's for Critical Thought.
Critical Thought. There you go. All right, let's crown the king.
JD, I need you to tell me what he's doing, what he wants, what his commitments are, and why does he hate us? Why does he hate crypto?
Okay, so a little bit of context here. Okay, so Gensler. Oh, awesome. We lost Kiara. So a little bit of context here. Gensler is a very political dude. He has aspirations that are super public to be Treasury Secretary. That's like his number one goal in life is to become Treasury Secretary. There's a lot of speculation that may never happen because at least in the Biden administration, he doesn't have a ton of fans. But long story short, if you were a political figure and you were trying to make your case for why you made big moves in the regulators and now you have earned your spot to be the Secretary of the Treasury, there's some political juggling that has to happen. And I think that's kind of what he's doing right now. And that's what it feels like he's been doing. So up until 2022, I think Gensler pretty much had a relatively unscathed record. People weren't like, there was no public outrage with respect to many of the things that they were doing. Of course, there was there's some weird actions that happened prior to 2022, Ripple being one of them, and others. But nonetheless, in the last little bit, all of a sudden, his hopes and dreams came crashing down really quickly with a lot of less than ideal circumstances in the crypto markets and in the American securities markets. And, a lot of weird fraud and different things. And they were originally of the opinion, this is a very long-winded explanation of this, but it'll make sense in a minute, I promise. They were originally of the opinion that, I'm not sure exactly how to explain that. Maybe that's not the best way to explain it. But I mean, the SEC really thought, let's wait. Let's wait and kind of see, and we'll spend our time. Policymakers will make legislation. Then all of a sudden, all this crap happened, and it became, painfully obvious that regulation should have been considered long ago. And because it wasn't considered, now they're trying to blame, regulators, SEC, CFTC, et cetera. And so now it's a bit of a reactionary type thing. So now they're like, enforcement's going crazy. I'm not sure he hates us directly. I don't know his
I am
personal.
sure he hates us directly.
Hey, you're back. I don't know his
directly.
I don't know his personal stance. I'm trying to be in the middle. I'm trying to be unbiased here. Come on. We'll still crown him the king of FUD.
Will we?
Oh, fuck yeah, we will. But anyways, so all of that context to say that if you understand his motivations, then you can kind of see why, maybe not, you don't have to agree, but at least you can see why he's doing what he's doing. And so his motivations are not, in my opinion, to stay as the SEC chair and do the best job that he possibly can, and then eventually retire and move into private sector with a big fat golden parachute somewhere. In fact, that would be a totally different approach than the one he's taking now, in my opinion. The one he's taking now is because he has aspirations for, political ascension. So that's pretty important. It's pretty important to separate that context first. Okay, so what is he doing? So he's saying now that he wants $2.4 billion in funding to fight crypto misconduct. That's alarming in many ways, because define crypto misconduct. Like, where is the 2.4 billion going to go, and what is it going to cost all of us who are on the receiving end of many of this discussion? So if they have $2.4 billion that they can spend, penalizing or trying to enforce rules that are very opaque and unclear, imagine the legal costs and the market cap attrition of all of these entities that may be unduly investigated. Who knows, right?
This is also blind, like it's tone deaf, just like the Royal Mint was actually, is, hey, there are people having other crises right now that are potentially far more important. Why do you think that $2.4 billion going towards something that we haven't appropriately regulated how can that be the appropriate use of funds, right?
Well, I mean, that argument can be made in many directions. Why we send over 100 billion to Ukraine with absolutely zero oversight.
Yep.
That's another good question. But nothing against Ukraine or in support of Russia. It's just saying, like,
where are the checks and balances that are supposed to?
This unfettered spending is exactly what's got us to where we're at. And this is tone deaf in the sense that everybody in the industry is saying, hey, like, we want to work together. Let's proactively work on legislation and regulation together. But instead they're saying, nah, instead of spending 2.4 billion creating, focus groups and all these things to build legislation with industry in mind, they're doing the exact opposite. They're saying, give us a whole bunch of money to apply rules that aren't directly applicable to companies that don't understand where and how they may not be in alignment with compliance. This to me seems insane. So for that reason alone, today, Gary Gensler is canceled by me. I've canceled.
You canceled him?
Gary Gensler.
Did you watch the video? Did you watch the Twitter video?
Yeah. So I'm going to come to that. So again, this is another one of those, like, first of all, his Twitter videos are super cringe because he's trying to play politician and in all of these videos. Now, in a vacuum, if you look at the 4 components that he suggested they want to focus on, in terms
what are they?
I don't remember exactly what they are. God damn it. Why'd you call me out on that?
Because this is the news. This is the daily news show.
I'll tell you what they are here. Hold on. They are level the playing field. Level the playing field. Ensure brokers put your interests first. Transparency and execution quality. And then upgrading on pricing increments.
Okay.
All of these things are obvious. Like, no shit. Like, all of this stuff needs to be focused on if your goal is consumer protection. The problem is the tone and the narrative is very condescending and patronizing in these videos.
Okay, so I found the narrative must have been built for school children. Like, and I'm not trying to say that rudely, but I was trying to think about who the audience would be. And if you go watch this, we'll link to it, of course. But if you go watch this, it sounds like an elementary school presentation that is causing a lot of fear, uncertainty, doubt. It's just fudding the place up. It's like, you have money. Did you know that your money is on the dark market? Did you know? No, it's okay. We'll give you a hug. You're going to be okay. You're going to make it through because I have some promises. Yes, Dad made some promises to you. And I'm like, what is this video?
So that's what I mean. Like, the condescending, patronizing nature does not encourage collaboration at all. The tone being, towards middle schoolers is pretty common. I mean, mainstream media is written at a 4th or 5th grade level on purpose.
It's supposed to be people who are the age of 10. That's the reading comprehension that it's supposed to be at.
Right.
But that's reading comprehension, not tone. You can pat your kid on the head and tell them to go to bed, or you can be like, okay, it's bedtime. Right?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is just an interesting one. And what's so confusing about it is the points are actually accurate. Like,
right.
Those things are important. They're fundamental tenets of industry regulation. It doesn't matter what the regulation, or whether it's CFTC, whether it's SEC, whether it's somewhere in IROC in Canada or whatever. Those are fundamental tenets. No shit. Like, those things are all important. We want to continuously be improving on those. But again, you can't just say all these superlatives and not give specifics in how the people that aren't in compliance can A, identify that they're not in compliance, and B, is there a path to get into compliance that we can all agree will be acceptable? Neither of those two things exist. And so that, to me, is the bigger problem. We can talk and put videos out until the cows come home, but that doesn't help any of us. All that does is scare people away from the space and diminishes the likeliness that people want to be collaborative with regulators if they are confrontational and patronizing like this. So, Gensler, you are the king of FUD today and every day. And again, you're canceled. Okay, we've got like 1 minute. Anyways, we got 1 minute. Let's deal with the question.
We've got a couple minutes.
What did they ask?
We had this great person ask a question. If you ask early, we will actually do it live, but it just came as we were shutting the stream down yesterday. So it's from a wonderful person on Twitch whose name is Gizadar for Ev. And basically this has to do with what you and I have talked about. I'm sure it's an acronym, but I don't know what it's for. This is what you and I have talked about in terms of pegging the US dollar against something else. So I've made a lot of jokes about USD pegged against Bitcoin or what have you. But this is a genuine question about how Silicon Valley Bank, if they had pegged their assets to a stable coin, say USDT or USDC, how might this have played out differently? There might not have been the actual physical visual of people bank running. How could it have impacted? Obviously this is theorizing. We aren't financial experts, but what could that have looked like?
Well, it's an interesting question. First of all, Silicon Valley Bank doesn't peg their assets to anything. Their deposits are in fiat, so US dollars, period. So the US dollars are pegged to the US dollar, which by pretty much any account should be more reputable and secure than any stablecoin currently, at least currently. Okay.
Well, this could also kind of lead into that question of gold back versus.
But I think what they're suggesting is that the bank run wouldn't have happened. And if we get this wrong, my friend, if you're watching, which I suspect you are, let us know, and we'll, clarify your question a bit, and we'll continue to talk about it. But I mean, banks can't peg their assets to anything. The problem here actually has nothing to do with crypto at all. Silicon Valley Bank had nothing to do with crypto, zero. It just so happened that major crypto companies happened to bank there because they're fintech forward, that they were a lot more open to crypto. But the vast majority of deposits were non-crypto tech firms and VCs. So let's put that a little bit aside. But the problem with Silicon Valley Bank was not necessarily the deposits being denominated in US dollars. The problem is that banks make money by taking your deposits and doing shit with them, either lending them out or investing them in stuff, okay? Because they're giving you an interest rate. That interest rate has to come from somewhere. Now, the problem is that the interest rate they're giving you is near zero and has not changed over almost the entirety of interest rates going bananas in the last 18 months. So the problem with that is depositors are going, wait a second, I'm making near zero. I know the risk-free rate of T-bills is at least 5, higher if you have a longer duration. It depends, or it depends on the durations. I don't know what they are right now. But anyways, they purchased all of these T-bills. So they're saying, hey, this is like relatively risk-free. The problem with T-bills is that if you hold them for the entirety, then of course they're worth what they were supposed to be worth. You buy a $1,000 T-bill with a 5% coupon. You get 5% a year until that's up. You end up with, at the end of the first year, what's that?
But they had to sell early. But
yeah, so here's the problem.
Is actually about what would it have looked like if it were a crypto?
I'm getting there. So what happened was now depositors were going, wait a second, I'm getting no interest. The bank was going, this spread is amazing. We're making a bloody killing. Our shareholders are happy. All of our executives need bonuses because they're just doing an amazing job of earning us a bunch of money on the backs of all of our depositors. And the depositors are going, this is what kind of started it. Depositors are going, you know what? Maybe I'm going to start to pull some of my deposits because this is insane. And that happened, and it caused more people to start looking at this thing. And they went, oh, crap. Like, if Silicon Valley Bank has to actually honor all of their withdrawals in the event of a bank run, they have to sell all these bonds at significant 25, 30, 40% discounts, depending on the durations. That's the major problem. Okay. So that's what caused the issue. That problem is exponentially worse because of the rate at which rates were increased. So like, they bought all these T-bills on advice of the Fed. This is the other thing. The Fed was very pushy with banks prior to all the interest rates going up to buy T-bills. Buy T-bills, take money out of the money supply, and hopefully curb some inflation. But instead, they jacked rates and it made all of these bonds that everybody bought much less valuable. I know we're going over time here, but this is important. So if and where they would have involved stable coins in this whole thing, to me, it wouldn't have changed anything. The problem is still, if I made $1,000 USDC deposit into Silicon Valley Bank, they're still going to have to find a way to pay me interest on that deposit, even if it's minimal. And as a consequence, how they make money is by turning around and taking my 1,000 USDC and probably converting it to something so that they can, again, try to do the same thing that they did with fiat. The only difference is if we had crypto as opposed to USD as the bank asset, the deposit asset, there's just another swap most likely that would have had to happen. And so for the longest time, I mean, Tether and USDC, actually, their whole business model is very similar. Tether and USDC in and of themselves have a very similar business model. They give you this asset, they custody the fiat, and then they take the fiat and do stuff with it to earn yield. Now, why Tether got in such big problems a few years ago, and why there's been so much speculation, was that they had commercial paper in China, they had residential real estate, they had commercial real estate, they had loans. Like, these are fairly high risk assets. And so the similar challenge in that environment was, what happens if everybody wants their fiat back? Is Tether going to die? And so everybody was calling for an audit of Tether's holdings, and they weren't giving it. So, which to me says they probably were in big trouble, but they were able to weather the storm for a few years before a bank run happened. And now they've got almost everything in short-term duration. So does USDC. That's how they make their money. That's how Circle makes money on USDC, is they take the fiat that would be sitting there in custody and do stuff with it that is generally highly regulated and generally fairly secure. So would this have changed anything? I don't think so. If they would have done the same thing, the problem was not whether it was crypto or fiat. The problem was the interest rate duration mismanagement. So the amount of time that they would have to wait relative to get their assets back relative to the amount of people that could and would and eventually did request withdrawals.
Do you think there would have been the same level of panic if it were all digital, because we wouldn't have had the physical artifacts of a bank run?
It doesn't matter. Most of that bank run was digital anyways. I mean, the days of lining up at your bank are done. Like, you can send, especially in America, you can send ACH You can send wires right from your online banking. You don't need to line up. You don't need to wait. That's part of the problem. I think it actually might have made it worse if it was completely digital because it's even easier. It takes seconds. And the cost is near zero. So I think it would have actually made it worse.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Geezy Doctor Forever. I'm going to try all the pronunciations of this. You let me know if I'm pronouncing it right or wrong. You let us know if we answered your question or not. And we'll be back tomorrow at 12:30 EST. Go FUD yourself, JD.
Go FUD yourself, Kiara.